Hey everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Kelly Birmingham. This is a retrospective look back across the spectrum, looking at my 25 plus years, now 28 years, working in the field with children and adults with autism and other developmental disabilities. And I'm with my partner in crime, always, Jen Lucero, mom to Dylan and Ethan. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, so we have a very special guest today. Before I introduce our guest, I will just say I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, SitePro. SitePro offers a wide range of engaging and practical continuing education courses developed by BCBAs for BCBAs, including myself. I think I have 5 or 6 courses up on their website. You can visit their website at sitepro.com to see the complete CEU library, including all of our podcasts, which are provided free, no cost, on demand for BCBAs looking to gain CEUs. And that makes me happy and excited because most of the time, BCBAs spend an enormous amount of time in their coursework. They learn lots of technical terms. And as you know, we started this podcast because BCBAs rarely have any experience or time with actually talking with caregivers and families and understanding the perspective of the family and really understanding autism itself and how it impacts the family. And so our podcast was started by myself as a BCBA, you, Jen, as a mom to Dylan, me with a stepdaughter on the autism spectrum, to talk about those issues that are not in any of the BCBA courseworks at all. So we are lucky today to have Susan Senator, who's well known, very famous, particularly in the East Coast, where I hail from. And Susan is an author of numerous books on autism. She's been in the New York Times, Washington Post, and writes as a contributing author to Psychology Today, where I stalk her and read all her articles. And she's mom to 3 young men, including Nat, who is on the spectrum. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Will you do our listeners, you've been on a podcast of ours before, will you do our listeners a favor and just give us a little bit about yourself and your family and your son?
Sure. So we're a family of 5, but right now it's just my husband and me living in our big house. Our sons are all off in their lives in their own ways. Nat, my oldest, who's the one who has autism, is living in a group home very nearby. So we see him a lot. And the other 2 are in the New York City area, in the arts. So I'm still in the autism field because it's going to be never ending. There's always advocating to do for Nat. And so I'll always be writing about it. And although now I'm writing a mystery, but there is an autistic person in it. So
Cool.
I'm never going to give it up.
Well, Jen and I, our last podcast was about, it was about the neurodiverse community and the severe autism community. And can't we just sort of all get along? And we talk about that because I work in both spaces. I work a lot in early intervention. I've had a number of my former clients go on to college and grad school and law school. I just was talking with an old client of mine last weekend. And I've also worked with a number of individuals who didn't go on in that realm, but are a little more, impacted. But as an ABA practitioner, I need to know how to work in both worlds and apply the strategies across both. And those groups fight a lot, unfortunately. But we were talking about it and how that the neurodiverse community talks a lot about just accept us for who we are. Right. And as an ABA practitioner, I have always come into this where I'm like, I know how to help teach people things. If you want the help, I'm here for you. And then your article came out called The Secret to Connecting with My Autistic Son in Psychology Today. And I was like, exactly, right? Like, let's also talk about folks that are more severely impacted on the spectrum and how to accept and connect with them too. So you're here.
It's hard. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I'm going to do a few quotes and I'm going to ask you to talk about it. And Jen, you have these experiences yourself. And so you talked about how Nate recently had a pretty significant incident. And you said right away, I thought it's January. Nat has always had difficult winters. One recent winter, he had daily self-injury and screaming. So much that we moved him out of that living arrangement and kept him home with us for months until something new opened up. Another winter, he cracked a window with his head. He was fine. He'd been in a rocking chair, but was rocking out of control. Then there was the winter when he was 10 and was expelled for behaviors. So you document this long history. And then you made a comment about how Nate won't be patronized or duped. I want you to talk about what that means. So BCBAs listening and other family members and caregivers listening, will you elaborate on this?
What I mean by that is that he's, I obviously he's autistic. He's not unintelligent.
Right.
He really knows who cares about him and who might be phoning it in. And I see it all the time. So I feel like I'm right about this, that I mean, ever since he was in school. Okay. So like 5 years old, 3, 7, I remember, the teachers by and large have really loved him and get it. And the specialists too. And he thrives with them. And then when we have a person who's afraid of him or something, he won't do well. And I mean, he might still do okay, but he's more likely to have issues with people who maybe are just doing their job, but kind of not really understanding how to actually connect with him. And I guess I shouldn't just say connect with him like everyone knows what I mean.
Right.
I mean, what I'm saying is there's a kind of admiration for him that should come out, like it does when you connect with someone. You suddenly feel this something similar coming from them, something that resonates in you, and you feel good about them. And that's liking them. That's how I always thought of it, like that, just this feeling of, I think she really likes Nat. I'm not sure what's going on there. And you can tell by the way the notes to me would sound, in the notebook going home, like he aggressed out of the blue on a teacher, and she was even pregnant. And
Oh.
I remember that. And I remember thinking, do you really think it's that personal?
Yeah.
And of course it could be, because like I said, I think he knows what goes on with people, but I don't think he would know if someone was pregnant. And I don't think he would target that person unless that person felt kind of uneasy with him. It's kind of symbiotic, he'll sense the unease, and then he'll feel it, and then they'll feel it more, and it escalates.
I've definitely had similar situations like throughout my son's life as well. Ours, I think it's spot on that, when it comes down to it, I think our kiddos, they are like everybody else as far as like my son's a very good judge of character, I think. And I think he quickly learns, like, whether someone's feeling him or he's feeling them. He used to like immediately go show people the door, after like 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Or if he likes you. And it's interesting because, other people he's just like, gravitates to. And yeah, I think maybe it's just like this sense, like for them, like if they know, like if someone like has it in them, because not everybody does. I mean, I've struggled with that. You probably have too, not just with, providers or school, but even with relatives and friends. Like there's some people that just don't get it, and they're never going to get it, and they're never going to accept it, whether or not they tell you or not. But the one thing you brought up too, and Kelly was saying the different timelines, I was wondering, my son definitely has certain times of the year specific months or different times, like especially if there's a break in school or something, where I just am like, gearing up and like waiting for it, where, it seems like what hits the fan. And it sounded like a winter thing for you. Have you seen a consistency, like a timeline or anything where Nat does like have more struggles than others?
Yeah, I do think that the winter is the worst, or
Mhm.
like when the light starts to change. So I guess that's November. His birthday's in November, so I think that helps.
Mhm.
Because he loves cake,
Mhm.
and you know, but I think it also sometimes when he likes something, also that makes him anxious because there's I believe some kind of fear that it will go away. So
Mhm.
what he starts to think about in November is Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas,
Dylan.
um, and winter. So
Mhm.
it's not that he hates winter, it's that the time of year is full of things that he likes, and he's afraid that maybe they'll go away. It's that same, kind of autistic fear of the change, or the
Mhm.
human fear of change. But at any rate, I think with him, he'll always say to us, it's winter, especially a winter like this where there's no snow.
Mm,
I'm
mhm.
in Boston, so
Mhm.
so that's the kind of thing that that we get from him. He'll get really upset about something, and we'll see the I guess the antecedents. So he's like pinching his neck and
Mhm.
walking fast and muttering to himself. And if I listen carefully to what he's saying, I might hear something like winter, and then he might like suddenly yell out, December. And so that gives you the whole story right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I ask his current caregivers and staff who work with him, what did he say when the outburst happened? And Nat is not a talker at all, but he might say that one word that will help
Mhm.
them. you
Mhm.
know I had something happen at his day program where they they said, I don't know, he had this outburst, and I said, well, what was he talking about? And they said, Meals on Wheels.
Mhm.
Then so they said, so I don't know why he's upset. And I said, I think he wants to go back to doing Meals on Wheels.
Right.
He actually
Mhm.
he actually told you.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to dive into this. The article is Secret Connecting with My Autistic Son. And I've known Dylan since he was little, and it's dead on. He can spot
Mhm.
a mile away if you're, true or you're a fraud. It sounds like Nat can too. My stepdaughter's the same way. If she thinks that in any way you don't like her or get her, she's gonna mess with you. Like she's messed with people real, like it's hysterical on our end, but the poor people, like she's just tortured on their end. And
Mhm.
so I made a career change about 6 months ago and went from operations back to doing direct work, actually. And I wanted to just dive deeper. I'm someone who always likes to learn, so I'm always switching up things. And so I'm working now in a severe behavior department. And I've always worked in that area, but I'm singularly working in that department now. And it strikes me, and for our department, and I also used to chair the Profound Autism Special Interest Group for CASP. And it strikes me that the therapists that work in that department are a different breed, right? Like you can tell they're there for the right reasons. And Jen and I have done a podcast about this before. There are a lot of people that won't work in our department and say,
Mhm.
they'll say things like, well, I don't want to get hurt or hit. And I don't, they purposely avoid the severe population. And so I'm actually doing a survey with my team to ask them, like, what makes you want to be working in this department? And they 100% all say, because we really get the kids and the adults, are like, we like them and we respect them. And so
Mhm.
when your article came out, I'm like, well, how do we actually teach people to connect? Or do you just have it in you? Do you know what I mean?
I do know.
Like, is
I
that
mean,
something we teach or it's there?
Well, I wondered that my whole life. There's times when I'll say, well, they have fully trained staff, so that is great, and they are really worth the cost. And then I'll think to myself, yeah, but sometimes all the training in the world yields someone who still doesn't get it. And then I also think about the staff in Nat's house and at his day program. I don't know what their training level is. I'm assuming it is not in this field because they're immigrants. And I don't know, like what job they had when they were in their former homes, and what they had to do just to get by in America. So I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's about fear, not only just of that physical attack out of nowhere, but also just fear of kind of like not of doing something wrong yourself and being embarrassed or shamed. I don't know. Those are the only things I can imagine, or that I've observed with people who don't do well with Nat. There's like something they're afraid of.
Hmm. So how do people connect with Nat?
Um, they have to really, when they talk to him, they have to mean it. They have to really want him to answer. And so there's things that they can do to show him that they want him to answer. And I've really been studying this lately, because he isn't talking as much anymore, and I want to understand what's happening in other parts of his life. But what I find is, if you ask him a question, you have to wait for the answer. And in waiting, you're showing him, I want to know. So you're going to have to find those words if you can. So there's this waiting. I also realize if you say his name after once or twice during what you're asking him, sometimes I touch him on the shoulder. I'll be looking at him. And I'm thinking of the example I'm thinking of is when we're doing Facebook together, and he'll read a question and he'll like not say anything, he'll not answer, so then I'll have to repeat it and wait for him to answer. And I can feel that he's really thinking about it because he knows I want to know. So he can't just say yes or no. That's the other thing I tell people: don't just accept yes or no. It needs to be a choice question. So I guess I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You are. Jen, how do people connect to Dylan?
Yeah, I think very similar. Dylan definitely needs time to process like what the question or, and that connection. Dylan is kind of a jokester, and there's certain things that he's really into. And so if, people play up on that, like he's obsessed with like villains, like from, movies and stuff, especially Disney. So if there's any like sort of like connection thing that you can do, it's interesting. He doesn't like to answer questions, and I do the same thing of don't let him get away with just yes or no. Try to, push him a little, but, he likes to ask questions, or he likes to say something and joke around and have people repeat what he's saying. So that's like a big thing for him. So like if you like play along with him sometimes, like that's when he will open up and kind of do a little more, like it could be something silly. Like he also loves weird stuff like natural disasters, like explosions and stuff. So it's just a really like weird, goofy thing. But like if there's certain people in his life that totally go with it, and man, he loves them. And like, I see him have, not conversations, but definitely like more interaction with people.
That sounds like Nat too. He used to really love thinking about accidents.
Yeah. Oh
When
yeah.
he was 10 or 11, he would say, Nat will walk on the tracks and walk on the tracks. And then I'd say, well, what will happen? And he said, train will come and hit you. Boom. And then what? You'll be in the hospital. Head will bleed and bleed.
Oh, it sounds just like Dylan. Yeah, and it's like, well, life's not a cartoon, dude. Right?
It was scary hearing all
Yeah,
the things that Nat
man,
would
they think
do.
it's the best thing ever. Yeah, my
Yeah.
son used to love to watch footage of like skateboarders like falling downstairs and stuff. That was his big thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're trying to figure out life, and
Yeah, for
falling
sure.
is completely unpredictable and crazy. And maybe it's really like something they can relate to. I don't know.
You
But
know,
lately, Nat has not been wanting me to guess what he's thinking or even what he's upset about. If I might say, oh, we didn't do the calendar yet. Let's do the calendar. And he'll say, no, no calendar. But we know that's what it is. So
Mhm.
then we have to sort of sneak up on him with it and say, hey, Nat, I just did the calendar. So you want to come here and see it? So I have to act like it was my idea,
Mhm.
So in a way, I'm being phony. I'm tricking him, but it works in that case because there's just something just too much for him to be guessed at right in his face. It's just too much. So you just sneak up.
You know, there is a young man in our clinic. He's 23. He's big, nonverbal, and he when he moves, he's very fast. He's very fast and unpredictable. And he's injured a number of our employees. And I shouldn't say it that way. I was going to be working with him the other day, and I actually was scared. And I don't get scared with anyone. Jen knows, like
He deals with
I'm-
Dylan all the time.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get, I just don't get scared. And I dealt with, large adults. My very first job was running group homes and working with, very behaviorally involved folks. But there was something about him that was scaring me. And I think part of it was my age. I'm older now. When I was younger, I'm like, I'm invincible. And so I went in and I thought, just to your point, I was like, why do I feel scared? Like, why am I not connecting with this young man? And then I spent some time with him, and then I saw him smile and laugh about something. And I went, bingo. That's what I needed. I needed to like connect with him over something. And when I saw this young man who in general seems to be in a lot of pain, and a lot of his behaviors seem to be related to like physical discomfort and or inability to communicate things that he wants or needs. And when I saw him smile and laugh about something, I went, and I immediately relaxed. I saw him as like a human. And I'm embarrassed to say that I had to go through this after, 27 or 28 years, but I saw him as a human. And then I had some empathy where I thought, must be really hard to be what we suspect is in pain and not be able to tell anyone and get relief for it. And then I started to respect him. And then I was like, now I care and I'm invested in trying to help him get what he needs. And I went through this whole transformation over the course of several hours. And when I ended my time with him, I thought, that is how I needed to connect with him. Right. And I heard you say, Susan, that like somebody, like we need to care about what they have to say. Right. And not just ask them, but care. And then I watch you on Facebook and you find common interests with Nat, with your baking and the fact that you together post on Facebook. And I just thought, if we could just see people for the humans they are and connect their interests and have a level of respect, not sympathy, but empathy, that might be part of the secret.
I think so. It's hard, though, of course, because sometimes you'll have a person like Nat who doesn't have many or almost any hobbies
Right.
that you can join him in.
Yeah.
I remember when he was a newborn, or first little guy, I used to feel like, God, all he wants from me is food. I mean, that's kind of an obvious thing, but that to me was a manifestation of something being off between us. But we've discovered reading together, so that took care of some of that. But now it's kind of tough. He doesn't watch video games. There's a lot of things he doesn't do, but that's forced us to think a lot more about what's he like. Well, he's a big guy, always moving
Mm.
around.
Mhm.
So sports makes sense,
Mhm.
you know, Special Olympics. So all year round we're at Special Olympics, and that's our life too. And now the rock band he's in, same thing. We hang around at the practices, and you know, lately I kind of feel jealous. I want to play my guitar with them, but you know, I don't know if they'll let me. I'm too old. But you know, I don't know, like, so it's a matter of you're like really like tuning into him and observing and remembering things I've seen, and then there might be a connection I'll make in my head of something he likes, and just trying to get in that way and finding a way that I can do it with him. And the baking is a great example of that. And my husband Ned does walks with him. You
Nice.
know, it's just very basic, enjoyable stuff, but it works.
Nice. Well, keep writing your articles because and I'll post a link to maybe where people can find you in our session notes, and I'll get some other information on you. I'll make sure I'm posting the session notes because you, the way you write really resonates to a lot of families and caregivers. And I want more folks in the field of ABA to read these articles and get that perspective. So thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today,
you.
Susan.
Yeah,
It's
thank
always
you.
fun talking to you.
Thanks.